Hello ladies and gentlemen, it's TX141 here, bringing you another Ace in a Day gameplay for the arcade mode of War Thunder. Today we're bringing out the Japanese A6M2 Reisen. Historically, the Reisen, also known by the moniker the Zero, was a capable carrier-based plane introduced in 1940. The reason why we say it's capable is because historically the Zero, at the time of its introduction, was probably the best dogfighter amongst its contemporaries, possessing a very light frame and great agility, at the cost of a lack of armour and self-sealing fuel tanks. Additionally, the Zero had a very good range, and hence why it was employed at Pearl Harbor. Now in War Thunder, the Zero pretty much handles like its real-life counterpart. Well, this A6M2 spec does. I haven't tried the other Zeros yet, in the fact that it is an incredible dogfighter. However, that does come at the cost of sufficient protection for the pilot and the structure of the plane. And as a result, as you're going to see in this rather extended ground strike gameplay on the map Fjords, that I really do have to position myself always behind my opponent, have to try and avoid the head-on engagement and make sure that I come out on top with minimal damage to the plane. Now, as noticed, this Corsair was up at my altitude, although they've been engaged by my teammate, and I do realise that the Corsair has taken critical damage, and so I finished them off, so we'll call that half a kill. A A6M2 comes directly towards me, so I decide to fly over and loop under. Although I'm not sure why the A6M2 didn't try to make a turn fight out the engagement or dive for it. So that's a kill by myself, so we'll say we're on 1.5 now. And I notice an enemy Spitfire's coming over as well, just behind, so I decide to turn and engage. Although very shortly, what perplexes me is that this Spitfire was rather ignorant of my presence, and so I can take advantage of it by accordingly climbing to engage the Spitfire Mark II in the middle of the screen. Okay, so a little bit about the A6M2. The A6M2 in War Thunder possesses its real-life armament of two 7.7mm machine guns and two 20mm cannons. The two 7.7mm machine guns being based just above the prop, and the two 20mm cannons being based in the wings. The thing to note as I go into this engagement with the I-16 Type 28 Ishak is that you're always on the back foot with this plane. Now, speaking of being on the back foot, I'm just about to use a series of vertical loops in order to get on the back of this Ishak and take them out with an effective firing solution, as you're about to see. When I say you're always on the back foot, as I've just achieved my 4th kill, the reason why you're always on the back foot is that while the Zero does possess probably some of the most remarkable dogfight qualities, especially in the horizontal and even in the vertical, you always need to make sure that the dogfight's on your terms. And the problem with arcade is because players can constantly keep respawning, it means that when you do go for that one-on-one engagement, especially at lower altitudes, although it does happen at high altitudes as well, you're always in a situation where at the time of getting behind your opponent and getting into the position to take that final shot, another enemy plane comes in right behind you, and all they need to do is hit you with a 1-second burst of 20mm cannon ammunition, for example, or of a set of 12.7mm machine guns as found on most American fighters, and you've lost your chance because that's enough to take out your plane. And one thing to note is that although I would say it has been patched so that the Zero is less flammable, the Zero in general was quite a flammable plane, and you will get frustrated at times by being hit by light machine gun fire will set this plane on fire. So I decide to dive down because I notice there's not many enemy planes up at the higher altitudes anymore, and I just dive down, switch the engine off so as not to overspeed and rip my wings off, and look for a set of targets. I notice there's a large number of enemy planes here, and so I decide to go dead vertical and dive on this Dornier 217J. I managed to kill one of the gunners and take off a part of the flaps on the left hand wing. However, it's not enough to kill the Dornier, and so I have to break off. The setup I'm using on my Zero, the A6M2, is 250m gun convergence with omni-purpose ammunition for both the machine guns and the cannons. And now I decided to make a tight turn and loop over because I noticed there were a couple of enemy planes that were on my tail after I broke off from that Dornier, as you're about to see. I managed to take out the Aerocobra while coming out of my turn to claim my ace. And an LA5 flies over as well, and I decide to engage them despite the fact that they're not my concern. Although I know the LA5's on one of my teammates, and I want to be a helpful team player. So out of cannon ammunition, I have made use of the 7.7mm machine guns and the fact that the LA5 is staying in a very tight turn, achieving a critical hit, and eventually taking out the tail control, with the first critical being on the right wing of the plane. Making my 6th kill, I decide to start moving away, although I notice a P-47 Thunderbolt being harassed by one of my teammates, and accordingly that P-47 has to turn away rather than engage me. Again, I have to reload my cannons because you do get a very low amount of ammunition with your 20mm cannons, 120 rounds or 60 rounds per cannon, which means you can't be too liberal with your application of the ammunition. Now I know there's a number of targets here. I see the Yak-9T and I see a B5N2. The logic I go by at this point is that the Yak-9T is still chasing our Dornier 217, and as a result I've got enough time to take out the B5N2 Cape bomber before I break onto the Yak-9T. I get a critical on the B5N2 and I consider that's enough for now, and so I loop over, having achieved my 7th kill, and in a minute I do take a small amount of machine gun fire, or I may have just taken a small amount of machine gun fire from that Junkers 87, and so I decide to break onto the back of this Kitty Hawk, achieving a critical hit, and I just take a small amount of machine gun fire from that Junkers 87, which is risky I must admit, and I'm out of ammunition as well. Yep, that Kitty Hawk was secured as my 8th kill, and the Junkers 87 has been crashed into by one of my teammates, or rammed. So, having got my machine gun ammo back, I apply it to this Lag 335 who's gone in to take out that Dornier 217, and I'm just waiting really on my cannons to be reloaded. And unfortunately I don't have the expert qualification for this plane, which means it's a full 30 seconds or so before I get my cannon ammunition back. Fortunately, my teammate in the Aerocobra took out the lag, and so I got the assist. Now, the reason why, as I was saying, being on the back foot with this plane is that it's very difficult to get an opponent into a one-on-one situation unless you're really at higher altitudes or you've gone off to an obscure corner of the map. So as a result you have to be very quick and very effective with this plane in order to stay alive for the longest period possible. And as you're about to note, while that Beaufort did tempt me as being a juicy target, most of my teammates have gone over to him or her, so I decided instead just to keep my eyes open, keep my spatial awareness up, and head over back towards our bases and our fleet ships, just for the simple reason that being a ground targets match, I want to make sure that if there are any enemy attackers which are being given a free pass, that I need to revoke that and take them out accordingly. However, I would not condemn the Zero. It is a wonderful plane, especially when given the right circumstances. Yet you've always got to set up your dogfight very carefully, because a number of times I've performed a dive on an opponent and engaged them in a turn fight, only to find that as I'm about to take them out, an enemy plane has come over because they've dived down into the dogfight as well, and taken me out just as I'm about to finish off my target. The BF-110 decides to turn head on, and so I perform a series of erratic manoeuvres and go into a very tight upward climb, circling around to form a sort of cyclone or vortex if you will. The BF-110 has very poor energy retention in doing so, and I take them out, making my 9th kill. And I must admit that was a very satisfying moment when I did play the game, seeing the BF-110 just hang there nicely. And a BF-109 F2 comes by, and so I apply some of my cannon ammunition to achieve a critical hit. Although the F2 is getting away at this point, and so I decide to use up the rest of my cannon ammunition and then just break away because I notice another load of enemy planes coming over accordingly. So I dive down and head towards the ground, knowing that most of my opponents will not be able to match my agility in the horizontal and vertical, and so if I keep close to the rock faces and keep low, that way they'll probably overshoot, such as is the case of this F4F-3 Wildcat, who I'm onto the tail of now. I apply my 7.7mm machine guns, and my cannons come back accordingly, securing my double ace. And so I see a Yak-9K who decides to turn in towards me. Fortunately, he misses me, or he or she misses me, but I miss them, so no harm done there. And with all my teammates trying to kill the Yak-9K, I decide not to fire, and anyway, they were rammed by one of my teammates. Seeing that TBF Avenger was a nice quick kill, seeing that they were flying nice and level and were not making any attempts to try and engage me head on with their two wing mounted 12.7mm Browning machine guns. And so I again dive for the deck, picking up what speed I can and keep checking behind me to make sure there are no enemy fighters. Seeing as being engaged in a furball, as it's often called, does present quite a threat to the Zero. Constantly looking behind, I'm developing a OCD, or an obsessive compulsive disorder condition for checking my 6, and I'm just reloading my guns as I make my way back to the airfield. Although I notice in a bit that was quite good timing, because there's some enemy planes I need to take care of accordingly. This Messerschmitt 109 being a prime example. Although I do notice my teammates are engaged in the Messerschmitt 109 as well, and so I'm not making any rush to take them out, and I see a Spitfire Mark II appear as well. So I take them out first, making sure I don't crash into my friendly in the BF-110, and that's my 12th kill. Turning over now to engage that Messerschmitt 109, not intending to secure the kill if possible. I just do enough damage to make sure that I get the assist, and also that ML1's in a condition whereby they're not able to fight for much longer. Although in the end I would say the flak took out the Messerschmitt 109, giving me my 13th kill. As usually when you do critical damage or a noticeable amount of damage to an enemy plane, which is taken out by your team's flak, the kill was awarded to the player who did the last set of damage. And so as I break away from the airfield, I notice two enemy fighters here, and my main concern is the LA-5F, for the simple reason those two 20mm cannons will make short work of my plane. They loop up into the sky, and I make a sharp turn underneath them and get on their tail to finish them off, securing my 14th kill. And I noticed an enemy Hurricane coming over, and while I would have loved to have gone for the Hurricane over there, I was a bit nervous at this point, simply because A, I'm on a very good streak and I don't want my luck to end, and B, because I've got a large number of my own teammates heading over to take that Hurricane head on, and usually I'm more worried about my teammates in these circumstances rather than the actual enemy plane. Although I do notice that Hurricane's still making its way over, and so I decide to turn around this small rock face here and get the element of surprise on them. Although that was a very close pass in all honesty, and I wasn't anticipating the Hurricane Mark II trying to pass so close. Still, they've been eliminated from the game, although we didn't get a hit on them, meaning we didn't achieve an assist. And so now really I'm just cruising, trying to build up some altitude and build up some speed, and trying to get away from the general dogfight, simply because I'm feeling a bit tired at this point, and I think I've pulled my weight with 14 kills, or 13.5 if we consider that Corsair at the start of the game, as mentioned previously. The main tips I would give for flying the Zero would be as follows. For those who are interested, and this is from my own experience, so if you find that a different playstyle suits you, then by all means, that's completely fine and dandy. I'm not here to tell you how to play, I'm here to just advise you what a suitable set of tactics for a given plane would be. The Zero makes a fundamental change from a number of other planes at its rank. Being a rank 2 plane, you go up against planes such as the Hellcat, the Messerschmitt 109 MLs, and Spitfire Mark 1s and Mark 2s. Now while those planes do possess some level of agility, whether it's in the horizontal or vertical, the Zero possesses all that agility in both planes, and as a result you need to pick on opponents accordingly. And speaking of picking on opponents, I noticed this LA-5 decides to dive down towards me, although they break off before they open fire, because I make a very sharp set of manoeuvres once again, and their interest seems to have waned onto that plane on our airfield. And so I just pursue the LA-5 from above, making sure not to dive too much until I know I've got them on the back foot and I can engage for the kill. Such as follows now. That grants me my triple ace, i.e. my 15th kill, and so I'm feeling incredibly content, and I'm starting to get the feeling, can I make it for the 20 plus club, which is known on War Thunder for the arcade mode. However, at the same time, I prefer just to finish the game off nice and quietly now, seeing as 15 kills is more than enough. So as I was saying, my advice with the Zero would be as follows. Because you possess such agility, in both the horizontal and vertical planes, you can to an extent use energy tactics and turn-in tactics. You're always going to need to come down to a turn and burn playstyle in the end, whereby your agility means that you can get behind most opponents, other than other Japanese Zeros or the Ki-43 Hayabusa. However, it's going to be very rare that you two will engage each other for the simple reason the Zero seems to be a plane that doesn't appear as often as it used to. As a result, that means that while you possess agility, you also lack the armour, so going head on against most opponents is non-advisable, especially if you're going after bombers. Now, I have tried taking down Mitchells in this plane, and I've been successful. However, usually it's cost me a significant portion of the plane, i.e. in terms of wing control, or I've had damage to the engine. In a number of cases I've even lost the pilot, despite my vitality being over 30. And that's simply for the reason that this plane's got such little armour on any given portion. So as a result, if you can try to avoid head-on engagements and force an opponent into a really tight turn fight, then you'll win. Although don't be afraid to climb and dive in this plane as well, because it can gain speed and climb very effectively with an incredibly low stall speed. Reviewing the scoreboard, we've got 15 kills or 14.5. We also got 2 assists with 45,000 silver lines and 2,000, just shy of 2,200 research points, 2,000 of which going towards the next plane. It was a very good game in honesty, and I think it shows exactly what the Zero is good for, being that plane that once it's on someone's tail, it's going to rip them to pieces, with a careful application of a firing solution from the 20mm cannons. As you can see on the scoreboard, we pulled an incredible amount of weight for our team, having a score that's much more distant than anyone else on either team. However, rather than compare ourselves to how everyone else performed, I think we've just shown that the Zero can be, in the right hands and with the right set of tactics, a deadly opponent. Anyway, I've been TX141, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, why not subscribe, leave a like or comment. However, until next time, take care and have fun in the skies, ladies and gentlemen.